Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the dark side. I'm your host, Sherry, and I'm so thankful to have you here with me. Today, we're talking about a case out of Katy, Texas. A woman is found murdered in her bedroom closet, and all signs point to one person, but getting this person to trial was going to be difficult due to lack of evidence. My sources are in the description area. This is episode 133, The Case of Belinda Temple. This story took place in 1999. It was the year I graduated high school, so I remember it well. There was the school shootings at Columbine High. John F. Kennedy Jr. died in a plane crash along with his wife and sister-in-law. The Matrix was released in theaters. There was the Y2K scare. Everyone was making sure to turn their computer off before midnight struck, before 2000 hit. Legoland opened in California. SpongeBob made his debut on televisions across the globe. And in weird news from 1999, Italian model Fabio was riding a roller coaster at Busch Gardens when a goose swooped through the air, striking him in the face. He got on the roller coaster looking like Fabio, and when he got off the ride, his face was all bloodied and cut up, and there's like feathers everywhere and stuff. David and Belinda Temple are a married couple who live in Katy, Texas. Belinda works as a special ed teacher at Katy High School. She has a twin sister and a few other siblings. She comes from a big family. Belinda is described as loving, caring, and a people person. Once she graduated high school, she went on to attend college at Stephen Austin University in Nacogdoches, Texas. David works as a teacher at a different high school where he is also the football coach. David's whole life is football. He was once a star defensive linebacker for Katy High School, where he was voted most athletic. A cool little fact is while he was playing football for Katy High School, one of the cheerleaders on the field would grow up and become an actress by the name of Renee Zellweger. David got a full scholarship to play football at Stephen Austin University, where in 1989 he led the football team to win the state championship. It was at Stephen Austin University that he met Belinda. They hit it off, and one night David proposed to her on the 50-yard line of the football field. The two married in 1992, and in 1995, Belinda gave birth to their son, Evan. They decided to move to Katy, Texas, which is about 3 hours away from where they went to college. This is also David's hometown, and his parents still live there, so he would be close to his family, and he could, the family could help them out with Evan. Katy, Texas is about 30 miles outside of Houston. It is mostly known for rice farming. In 1998, Belinda and David seemed to be living a life they had long hoped for. Belinda had begun working as a special education teacher, while David was both a teacher and the high school football coach. Together, they created a warm, comfortable home with a fenced-in yard where their young son, Evan, now 3 or 4 years old, could play alongside their family dog. Their happiness deepened when Belinda discovered she was expecting their second child. A sonogram soon revealed that they were having a girl, and they decided on the name Erin Ashley. Belinda spent her free moments preparing the nursery, carefully choosing every detail to create a cozy, welcoming space for their daughter's arrival. They look like the picture of a loving family ready to grow. Over the fall of 1998 and into Christmas, friends and family of the couple began to notice some things off in their marriage. Belinda's family, including her sisters, noticed it the most. For example, David became a little weird about Belinda's weight gain. She's 7-8 months pregnant at this point. He didn't like that she had gained weight and brought it up to her often, even in front of company. He'd allegedly say things like, "Man, you're really packing on the pounds, aren't you?" I'm positive that she was super humiliated. Besides, she's pregnant. Women gain weight when they're pregnant. He even smacked her butt in front of everyone at a holiday dinner and made another comment about her weight. David is a very aggressive player on the field, and that kind of spilled over into his personal life as well. He could be really intimidating. He's this huge guy, and no one wanted to confront him, but Belinda's sisters are like, "What the heck is wrong with you?" Some of the other coaches and their wives also noticed things weren't great with the Temple family. David traveled often for work. His team he coached would play out of state, and Belinda was home and working. That's not a big deal. It's his job. But other things were showing, such as David basically controlling Belinda. Friends say she was a completely different person when he wasn't around. She was talkative and laughed a lot when you got her away from him. When he was there, she would just sit quietly and let him do all the interacting. On December 31st, 1998, Belinda is 8 months pregnant. She's ready to have this baby, but still has one more month to go. You may have or know someone who is at the end of their pregnancy. They're tired, they're over it, they just want to relax. David tells Belinda he's going on a 2-day hunting trip with the boys. It's New Year's Eve, and Belinda will spend it alone at home with her son Evan. In reality, David isn't going hunting with his friends. He's instead going to be spending it with his girlfriend, Heather. Heather Scott is this attractive blonde who worked at David's school. Heather is single and caught the attention of other coworkers. She and David began having an affair months before. David was iffy about it, not because he's married, but because another teacher was interested in Heather and he doesn't want to ruin their friendship. But the other guy says he's not going to risk his marriage for Heather. You can have her. This whole situation is wild. So Heather and David began secretly meeting for dates and to sleep together. Meanwhile, David's very pregnant, hardworking wife is home with their son and has no idea he's out doing these things. On January 11th, 1999, this is 11 days since that air quotes New Year's Eve hunting trip. It's a Monday. They had a good weekend and they went to the zoo together as a family, but now it's Monday and David and Belinda are back to their jobs at their schools. Sometime in the morning, Belinda receives a call from Evan's daycare. The school secretary notifies Belinda to call the daycare. The daycare teacher tells Belinda that Evan is feeling sick. He's not playing with the other kids the way he normally does, and he's running a fever. Belinda says, "No problem. I have an important meeting here at school this afternoon, but I will ask my husband to leave work and come get him." Belinda begins calling David's school and can't get a hold of him. She calls around a dozen times. Belinda's coworkers say they've never seen Belinda upset before, but this morning she was livid and very annoyed that she couldn't get a hold of him. So she leaves work and drives to the daycare to pick Evan up. Once she got him back home, she tries calling David again and was finally able to reach him. He says he will come home right away and keep Evan the rest of the day so she can go back to work. She had this important meeting that afternoon with parents, so she has to get back. She arrives back to work at 1 p.m. At 3:30, her day is over and heads back home, but she stops first at her in-laws' house so she can pick up some homemade soup that David's mother had made for Evan. Once she's home, she tells David she's tired. Remember, she's 2 weeks shy of her due date. She says she wants to go lay down and rest. He tells her he's going to take Evan and run some errands, go ahead and get in bed and rest. At 5:10 p.m., David's father calls the house but doesn't get an answer. We know this because he left a message on their voicemail that says he's just calling to check on little Evan, his grandson, hope the soup helped, and he's feeling better soon. Around 5:40 p.m., David and Evan arrive back at home. Their next-door neighbors are an older couple. They hear David banging on their door with all his might. He's yelling, "Mike, let me in. It's David next door." Mike opens the door and David shoved little Evan into his arms and says, "Call 911. There's been a break-in at my house. My wife is dead." David runs back to his house. Mike passes the boy to his wife. He tells her to call the police. Mike takes off behind David. He wants to go over and help with whatever's going on in this house, but Mike couldn't get past their fence because David and Belinda's dog wouldn't let them. This is a super hot piece of evidence. David and Belinda's dog Shaka, I believe she's a chow dog, she is vicious. She charges at every person that walks by that fence. She's basically a guard dog. She's known to be very aggressive towards everyone except David, Belinda, and Evan. You know those dogs that seem to just hate everyone? That's this dog. If you come over that gate or in their house, she will bite you unless David or Belinda are there to tell her to go lay down. David is on the phone with emergency services and he's hysterical, telling them, "My wife is dead. I came home with my son. Someone broke into my house and killed my wife." He says she is 8 months pregnant and laying face down in the closet. Side note, Belinda was still in her professional work clothes. She had a shotgun blast to the back of her head. The dispatcher tells him to perform CPR on her. He says he can't because she is dead and half her brains are on the floor. The dispatcher says you need to perform CPR so you can save the baby. There's still a chance the baby can survive. He says police are pulling up now, and they end the call. When police arrive, they are greeted by Shaka, who was not going to let them in the fence. They try to get her to let them in, but she is growling and ready to bite whoever comes in first. So they pull out their guns, and they're ready to shoot the dog. But David comes outside just in time and puts Shaka in the garage or somewhere where she won't attack. When they get inside the home, it's a grisly scene. Belinda is in her bedroom closet, laying on her stomach, which is sad to think about since she's 8 months pregnant. She has a shotgun blast to the back of her head. There's blood spray everywhere. Forensics determined that whoever killed her made her kneel down in her closet while he or she stood behind her. They placed the barrel of the shotgun to her at the back of her head and they fired. This is terrifying. Belinda knew she was going to die and had to have been begging for her life and her baby's life. The closet was the most muffled place in the whole house. It's an interior room inside an interior room. There's clothes everywhere. A gunshot in the living room would have alarmed neighbors, but inside an upstairs closet was a little more soundproof. The police did find that the Temples owned two 12-gauge shotguns, but both of these guns were accounted for and were not determined to be the murder weapon. As a spoiler alert, no murder weapon was ever found. There was some disturbances in the rest of the house, but it all looks staged. Like if you had to make your house look like a robbery took place, this is what you would do. For example, a TV had been pulled off the table, but it was still plugged in. Drawers were open, but nothing was taken from them. On the bedroom dresser, Belinda's jewelry box was there, along with David's state championship ring on a tray. Belinda still had her jewelry on, including her wedding ring. All the valuable items in their home were still there. A big piece of evidence was the door. So their back door opens to the living room. The door glass had been broken, like someone broke it to unlock the door. But the strange thing was all the glass was to the left-hand side. So if they broke the glass while the door was closed, all the broken glass would be immediately on the other side, inside on the carpet in the front door. But instead you had to walk in and turn left to see the glass, so it would appear the door was in an open position in the home when the glass was broken. Police are stumped because who breaks into a house in a busy residential neighborhood between 4:30 and 5 p.m.? This is when people are getting home from work. There's kids playing outside. There's people cutting their grass. How did this burglar know that he wasn't going to find Belinda's huge linebacker husband in there? Why wasn't anything taken? There was no evidence that Belinda had been sexually assaulted either, so that was ruled out as a motive. Burglaries don't usually end in murder. They usually take valuables and leave. They don't want to have to deal with a dead body. The crime scene investigator said burglars also don't usually carry 12-gauge shotguns on them, especially in broad daylight. This crime scene investigator tells David he has to test his hand for gunshot residue, and David complies. This is standard procedure. He goes back to the station to answer questions. He explains that he came home to watch Evan so Belinda could go back to work, and when she got back home from work, she was tired and wanted to rest. So he told her he would take Evan out for a bit so she could sleep. He says they went to the park and then the grocery store and then Home Depot before coming home. The grocery store and Home Depot do end up checking out because he and Evan were seen on surveillance. But David is having trouble remembering which park exactly he took Evan to. First he said it was one park, then he said it was another. Why can't he remember if he went to Peckham Park or Cimarron Park? It could either be due to grief and being mentally foggy, or it could be because he's lying and can't keep his answers straight. I find it odd that he took Evan to the park in the first place. Remember, Evan came home sick with a fever. It's January. Why have the little kid out in the park when it's cold and sick? I know it's Texas and their winters can be mild, but it still seems odd to take him outdoors to play, but whatever. Belinda's parents and brothers and sisters are informed and they are absolutely devastated. Not only did they lose Belinda, but they lost this little baby that was a part of their family too. Belinda's students and coworkers were shocked and saddened at her loss as well. Detective Tracy Shipley told CBS News, "It was one of the few cases we have where you have a completely innocent victim. She had lived a low-risk lifestyle. She was a teacher, she was a mother, she was a wife. She didn't have any bad habits, and to find her dead in her house was very heartbreaking." Meanwhile, police are canvassing the neighborhood, seeing if anyone heard or saw anything odd that day. David tells police they may want to check into one of the neighbors, a 16-year-old boy named Riley. So, Riley is one of Belinda's students at school. He also happened to live one or two houses away. Riley was known to be a troubled kid who allegedly participated in petty crimes. He told a reporter who was talking to people in the neighborhood that Belinda was his teacher and he was in school all day. He says that she was a nice lady who didn't deserve that. Riley later admitted to police that he wasn't in school and he had cut class so he could smoke pot. Riley's girlfriend told police that Riley called her that day after Belinda's murder and he was really upset that she died. He said she was the only teacher that really cared about him and wanted him to succeed. Police learned that Belinda had recently gone to Riley's parents and said he was missing school and his grades were being affected and he needed to attend school every day. His parents were shocked because they had no idea he was skipping school. So as a punishment, they took away his driving privileges. Is it possible that Riley was so upset by this that he killed his teacher? Likely not. Riley seems like a spray paint, graffiti, and smoke pot kid, not a murderer. Riley denies having anything to do with Belinda's murder. I don't know if it was Riley or his dad, but one of the two of them recently had seen Belinda outside trying to cut her grass, and she was pregnant and struggling, so one of them came over and told her, "It's okay, I'll cut your grass for you." All the neighbors said they didn't see anything out of place the afternoon that Belinda was murdered. No one heard Shaka going crazy except when the next door neighbor Mike came over to help after David brought Evan to his house. One girl in the neighborhood said her and her boyfriend got into a fight and he locked her out of the house. So she walks around the neighborhood to kill some time and cool off, and she walked by the Temples' home as David and Evan were pulling in. Nothing seemed out of place. The family who lives behind the Temples was a nice family called the Roberts. They share a backyard fence. Their two sons had come home from school at 3:57 p.m. when the bus dropped them off. 15 minutes later, they began watching a movie, the 1998 film Dr. Dolittle, which was a popular film starring Eddie Murphy. When the police came later that evening to talk to the parents about if they had heard anything, the boys blurted out that they heard a loud boom when they were watching the movie. It sounded like a gunshot. So they asked, "What part were you at during the movie when you heard this sound?" And they told him what was happening in the movie when they heard it. It was determined that they were 26 minutes into the movie. This puts the loud boom they heard at 4:30 p.m. 4:30 p.m. was the time that David and Evan were seen on camera at the grocery store. So if that sound the boys heard did indeed happen at 4:30 p.m., David was not home at the time. A huge funeral service takes place for Belinda. Her family says that David looked very bored the entire time. He didn't really show emotion. They also claim he wouldn't look them in the eye. His friends claim that David talked down to Belinda a lot and got on her about gaining weight. They also say when they went out to a bar with David, he acted like he was single, flirting with strippers and trying to get them to leave with him. Total inappropriate behavior for a married man with a pregnant wife and small child at home who believes he's out working late grading papers. They also say Belinda was excited about their new baby girl arriving soon, and David was not excited whatsoever. A user on Reddit, again for emphasis, a person with internet access and a keyboard. Take this however you want. He stated that he knew David for a long time and he was very invested in this case. He detailed a bunch of stories involving David. He basically described him as always being jacked up on steroids and very childish. He also did some really inappropriate things, like once he allegedly stuck his finger in his anus and put it under a football player's nose, laughing the whole time. He was known to be really immature and gross. David never disclosed to the police about his affair with Heather. They had to find out on their own. According to CBS News, the police talked to Heather twice, and she said that she had a casual romantic relationship with him and they had never been alone together. She later told them that he had been with her on New Year's Eve for 2 days and the two had sex. This was when he was supposed to be on the hunting trip. David tells police that he enjoyed Heather's attention and that he loved his wife dearly and he regrets having the affair. Months later, they still haven't made any arrests yet. Finding the murder weapon would help solve this case, but no murder weapon would ever be found. Even today in 2024, no murder weapon has been found. David moved on with his life. He moved back in with his parents so he could have help with Evan. Belinda's family says that he kept Evan from them all these years. Now, it's no secret that David didn't like Belinda's family, but to keep his son from them is really showing that. A year and a half after Belinda's murder, David remarries a woman by the name of Heather Scott. Yes, the same Heather Scott he was cheating on his wife with at the time of her murder. Together as husband and wife, they move in together and raise Evan as their son. In November 2004, this is almost 6 years after Belinda's murder, a huge headline is across every newspaper in the U.S. I know a lot of you remember this. Scott Peterson is found guilty for the murder of his 8-month pregnant wife, Lacey Peterson. This case has a lot of similarities. 8 months pregnant, having an affair with a younger woman. Scott and Lacey Peterson's case got way more attention, though. Well, this reignited a push to get an arrest for Belinda's murder because for almost 6 years, her killer, whoever he or she may be, has been living their best life and not being held accountable for Belinda's death. This case file lands on the desk of Kelly Siegler, a renowned district attorney known for her relentless dedication and unyielding toughness. Kelly Siegler is famous because she tried 20 death penalty cases and secured the death penalty in 19 of them. Good Lord, that's a lot of executions. This trial will be challenging because she has no murder weapon, no DNA, no fingerprints. All she has is a story that doesn't make any sense. She tells CBS News, the story was, according to David Temple, at the time he was out with his sick son running errands that didn't need to be run, a random burglar just happened to break into his house and shoots Belinda Temple in the back of the head while she's 8 months pregnant, while David Temple is having an affair with a woman he was madly in love with. Kelly Siegler's theory is that David shot Belinda at 4 p.m. Then he left to go run errands with his son so he could be seen on surveillance and create an alibi. We see that in so many cases. She believes the 2 young boys who live behind them may have heard a loud sound at 4:30 p.m., but it was not a gunshot. She says they're good kids and they're not lying, but she doesn't believe they heard a gunshot at 4:30 p.m. Kelly also gets her hands on some new evidence. The FBI has a jacket that belonged to David that had been tested and found to have gunshot residue on it. His jacket was in the bedroom on a chair. On November 29, 2004, David drops his son off at school. Evan is 9 years old by now. David is driving off and a police car is behind him and the lights turn on. David, thinking this is just some routine traffic stop, pulls over and gets out his license and registration. He is asked to step out of the car and is placed under arrest. He is placed in a detective's car and he asks him, "Do you know what this is about, right?" David says he doesn't know why he's being placed under arrest. He says it's for your wife's murder. David says, "Really? I didn't kill her, and that was 6 years ago." David's lawyer would argue that, yeah, gunshot residue was on the jacket, but it was also on all kinds of other stuff in the bedroom. A gun was fired. Of course, residue was going to go everywhere. It just so happened his jacket was in the bedroom hanging on a chair, which I do agree with this lawyer. That does make sense. When most people first heard gunshot residue was found on his jacket, everyone was like, guilty. But the way his lawyer explained it may make you reconsider. Of course, there's a lot of other reasons people believe David is guilty, but the jacket isn't it. The judge agrees the jacket isn't definitive proof and throws the evidence out of court. It's now 2007, and this whole case is going to be based on pure circumstantial evidence, which is difficult. David's defense lawyer is just as tough as District Attorney Kelly Siegler. They are at each other's throats every single day of this trial. Even the judge is like, cool it, you two. The defense brings up Riley Sanders, the teenager next door who Belinda had gotten in trouble with his parents, the sound the two boys heard who lived behind the temples. The prosecution brings up that no one could get past Shaka. Even the police officers were threatened by her, so much that they're ready to shoot the dog so they could get to the murder victim inside the house. The jury deliberated for 8 hours and came back with a verdict: guilty. David was sentenced to life in prison. Evan is only 12, and now his mom is dead and his dad is away for the rest of his life. Now, I know a lot of people have thoughts about Heather Scott, myself included. She was his mistress. He married her after his wife's murder. I get it. But Heather did end up raising Evan on her own, which she didn't have to do. I checked Heather's Facebook page and Evan's Facebook page. Evan is 30 years old today. They interact just like any other mom and son. She filled that role as his mom, was just 5 years old. She could have said, your dad's going to prison for life, peace out. But she raised him as her own instead. According to the Houston Chronicle, Evan calls Heather mom. As far as I can gather from the interwebs, Evan hasn't had any contact with Belinda's family his entire life, at least that I can find. I do know that Belinda's family has said that they loved him and they wish they could see him. I think they feel like Belinda's memory is being erased. In 2015, this is 7 years since David went to prison and 16 years after Belinda's murder. David appealed his case and he won. His victory was due to a Brady violation. A Brady violation is when a prosecutor fails to provide a defendant or criminal defense attorney with any favorable or helpful evidence to a defendant's case. In this case, it was polygraph evidence that wasn't provided to the defense, which is odd because I always thought polygraphs were inadmissible in court. But David is temporarily a free man out on bond until 2019, when his second trial began. David is again found guilty of murder. The sentencing phase took forever, partly due to the pandemic. It wouldn't be until 2023, which is 24 years after Belinda's murder, that David was sentenced to life in prison. He will be eligible for parole after 30 years, which will put him in his 70s. During his second trial, Heather filed for divorce. Belinda's family released a statement that said, "We are hopeful that by filing for divorce, Heather will be more candid and factual as to what she knows about Belinda's murder." David is currently serving his life sentence. He is 56 years old. Evan has stood by his dad the whole time. He believes his dad is innocent and that his mom was killed by a random intruder. A lot of people believe David is innocent. They agree he's a liar and a cheater, but he's not a murderer. I'm interested in what you guys think. David was convicted of murder by a jury of his peers. I know they don't always get it right, and sometimes innocent people end up serving life sentences, but I think the jurors got it right with this one. Belinda was only 30 years old. If alive today, she would be 56, and baby Aaron would be 25. They are buried together in Katy Magnolia Cemetery in Texas. Their gravestone reads both of their names. It has an inscription that reads, "Mother and child, we feel the touch of angels' wings." Rest in peace to Belinda and Aaron Temple. That's it for this week, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, and much love to you all.